battlefield buried beneath the grass, a temple older than the pyramids carved before names. Questions to the gods, etched in lead and buried with silence. Homes hidden beneath the desert floor, sealed with mosaics never reopened. Across continents and centuries, ancient mines built with stone, bone, and fire. They left behind cities of sand, temples half sunk in sacred water. Copper kingdoms mined, vanished, and never explained. These aren't just ruins, they're decisions, architectures of belief and fear. Some meant to align with the heavens, others left as whispers in the earth. In this journey, we follow 7 mysteries the ancient world never answered. From forgotten battlefields to sunken shrines, from oracles to vanished empires, what do these artifacts conceal? And why were they never meant to be found? This is more than history. Welcome to Riddle Me This Mysteries. It started with a bulldozer. In the autumn of 2023, during a renovation project at a soccer field in Vienna's simmering district, construction workers scraped away a shallow patch of earth and uncovered bone. Not one skeleton, not a coffin, just fragments. A femur here, a cracked skull there, disordered, layered, and far too many. Archaeologists were called in. What they found beneath that quiet urban field wasn't a cemetery. It was a pit, oval, 5 meters across, less than a meter deep. And inside it, the remains of at least 129 men, packed tightly together, some stacked, some crushed, some curled into unnatural angles. No shrouds, no markers, no sign that anyone had ever meant to return. These were not peaceful burials, they were deposits. Many of the men had died face to face with violence. Their bones held the evidence. Fine slashes across ribs, punctures near the pelvis, arms fractured mid-guard, as if lifted in a final moment of defense. Some skulls bore signs of blunt trauma, others carried the clean, deliberate marks of blades. This was no execution, no disease. It was close combat, sudden, chaotic, and personal. And yet, no one had remembered a battle here. The only clues came from what was left behind. Among the bones, archaeologists uncovered scattered items: a rusted dagger, iron nails from Roman military sandals known as caligae, fragments of scale armor, helmet cheek guards. The style, the metalwork, the context, everything pointed to the late 1st or early 2nd century CE. More precisely, sometime between 80 and 130 CE, when Emperor Domitian waged aggressive campaigns north of the Danube, pressing Roman expansion deeper into what is now Austria. And just a short distance from this mass grave once stood Dodona, the Roman frontier outpost that would one day become Vienna itself. Could this battlefield, forgotten, unrecorded, unnamed, have shaped the birth of the city? There are no surviving texts that mention such an event, no military dispatches, no chroniclers noting a clash or a loss. And yet Rome recorded almost everything: victories, defeats, uprisings. So what happened here? Was it a skirmish gone wrong, a failed incursion, or worse, a defeat Rome didn't want to admit? The burial tells us more through what's absent. There were no grave goods, no military honors. Roman practice at the time preferred cremation for its dead, especially soldiers. This grave is an anomaly, a violent exception. A trench hastily dug, bodies thrown in without rank or right, a place meant to be forgotten. And it was. For almost 2,000 years, the field above hosted sports games and Sunday strolls. The dead stayed quiet, sealed beneath roots and mud, until now. Today, researchers believe the total number of individuals may exceed 150. Some skeletons were disarticulated, and bones had shifted under centuries of pressure. But the message remains the same. This was a moment of catastrophe, one not written in ink or marble, only in bone. We don't know their names. We don't know who fought whom, but we know this: when Rome came here, something went wrong, and the earth, not the empire, preserved the memory. But if this place was forgotten, what else lies in silence? Not destroyed, but designed. What do we make of the structures that endured, longer than memory? Long before the pyramids were raised or Stonehenge stood in its circle, someone in Malta carved a doorway to the sky. Atop a ridge overlooking the Mediterranean, on Malta's southern coast, a massive temple rises not in height, but in weight. Hagar Kim, they call it now. Standing stones. But that name came later. The builders didn't leave one. No signs, no writing. Just stone, shaped, aligned, and left behind. It was built between 3,600 and 3,200 BCE, when no one we know had a written calendar. And yet these stones, some over 57 tons, cut from soft, crumbling limestone, weren't placed by accident. One upright block holds a narrow aperture carved straight through, a solar window. On the summer solstice, light pierces it and slides across the inner chamber, striking the same stone every year. At other times, moonlight may have crept through, and stars, the kind we no longer see. Recent analysis suggests the temple may align not just with the sun, but with the Southern Cross constellation, visible to prehistoric eyes over the Maltese horizon. Gacrus, Avia, Hadar, stars for sailors, and perhaps for students. Some researchers now believe Hagar Kim was more than a temple. It may have been a school of the stars, a sacred place where early navigators learned to read the sky long before they ever wrote their names. Inside, chambers bloom outward like petals, curving walls, trilithon doorways, niches that once held offerings or warnings. Among the finds, spiral-carved altars, animal bones, figurines with exaggerated hips, wide torsos and no faces. Some were headless. Others folded into shapes that suggest birth or sacrifice or transformation. Are they gods or those who summoned them? No answers, only echoes. The temple's oracle hole, a low opening between chambers, might have carried sound or light or something else. Maybe a voice whispered through it. Maybe the wind. Its purpose remains elusive, but it connects always the inner sanctum to something unseen. And around the site, cisterns carved in bedrock still collect rainwater, as if the builders harvested both the heavens above and the earth below. Thousands of years later, the temple was found intentionally buried under rubble, sealed, hidden. Whether to protect it or to protect others from it, no one knows. When it was uncovered in the 19th century, it had been asleep for millennia. Today it stands exposed but guarded, covered by a modern canopy, its stones weathered, its edges softened, its meaning still sharp in absence. Whoever built Hagar Kim could move stone, track stars, channel water, and leave behind structures that would outlast empires. But they left no script, no name, no creed. Just aligned stones, aligned questions. Yet if this place was built to summon the cosmos, what of places built to speak to gods more directly? Before temples rose in stone, before gods had sculpted faces, there was a tree, and wind, and questions. In the highlands of Epirus, beneath the shifting skies of northwestern Greece, stood the Oak of Zeus, the heart of Dodona, the oldest oracle in the Greek world. It began in the 2nd millennium BCE, when Greece was still threaded with ancestral cults and unwritten rites. Pilgrims came not for marble but for rustling leaves. The voice of the sky god, Zeus Naios, was said to move through the oak's branches, and from its creaks and shivers, priests and priestesses heard answers. By the 8th century BCE, the oracle had grown. What began as a sacred grove became a sanctuary. Bronze cauldrons were suspended so they could ring in the breeze, echoing into the silence between questions. Pilgrims now left behind something permanent. Thin lead tablets etched with their hopes, their fears, their indecisions. Over the centuries, more than 4,000 of these have been unearthed. Many folded, many buried, many still legible. Some are personal. Should I marry Philista? Is it better to plant barley or spelt? Will I return from the sea? Others are desperate. Will my master set me free? Have I offended the gods? These were not the prayers of kings. They came from farmers, wives, merchants, enslaved men, anonymous travelers. And though many wrote in different dialects, from Thessaly, Epirus, Illyria, they asked the same things, not for riches, for clarity. By the 5th and 4th centuries BCE, Dodona stood not just as a grove, but as a formal sanctuary. Stone temples, processional ways, even a theatre large enough for thousands. It became part of Greece's spiritual backbone. Still, the oak remained at its center, always the tree, always the wind. And yet, by the 2nd century BCE, Dodona began to fade. The rise of Delphi, the spread of new philosophical schools, and later, the encroaching hand of Rome, shifted attention. Under Roman control, Dodona declined. By the 4th century CE, with the rise of Christianity, the oracle fell completely silent. The tree withered. The cauldrons stopped ringing. The questions, still buried, were never answered. Only recently have archaeologists uncovered the full weight of what was left behind. In 2023, UNESCO inscribed Dodona's lead tablets into the memory of the World Register, recognizing what they truly were, one of the oldest collections of unfiltered human voices. Doubts cast in metal, ordinary lives etched into the earth, a ledger of longing. Some scholars now believe Dodona was not just a religious center, but a social space for processing fear and risk, a kind of spiritual court where even a whisper scratched into lead was enough to seek judgment. The tree is gone, its leaves have long ceased to rustle, but the questions remain, still folded, still waiting. And now, from the murmurs of the wind, we descend deeper to the sands of North Africa, where Rome built villas not to show their power but to bury it. The Romans built upward. They raised arches, aqueducts, temples that scraped the Mediterranean sky. But not here. In the ruins of Bulla Regia in northern Tunisia, Rome turned inward. Beneath the sun-scorched earth, entire homes were constructed not atop foundations, but beneath them. Villas whose courtyards dipped below ground. Bedrooms, mosaics, columns, all sunk into cool silence. What survives today was never moved. It was simply never exposed. Some believe it was climate. The summers in Africa Proconsularis were brutal, and the earth held a more stable breath. So Rome adapted. But adaptation rarely leaves mosaics behind. And yet here, art remains, buried not by time, but by design. These semi-subterranean villas flourished from the 2nd to 4th centuries CE, when Bulla Regia was a Romanized city in full bloom. Walk down stone steps into the House of the Hunt, and you arrive not at a basement, but a peristyle, ringed with columns, floored in elegant patterns, and flanked by rooms meant for living, sleeping, and memory. There are no windows, only ventilation shafts and carefully carved skylights that bleed soft light into the walls. Elsewhere, the House of Amphitrite preserves a grand mosaic of the sea goddess, reclining in a chariot drawn by sea creatures, tritons flanking her. The scene was once private, far below street level, never meant to impress strangers. And when the villa later became a necropolis, bones rested on the same floor where wealth once walked. Many of these structures lack clear surface entrances. No grand staircases, no grand facades, just descent. Did their builders seek protection, secrecy, or something else? Archaeologists have uncovered more than 350 mosaics here, many still untouched in their original floors. Not museum displays, but remnants of rooms you can still enter. Walls still carry frescoes and pigment, exposed now only because the sand above has shifted. Since 2009, the Getty Conservation Institute and World Monuments Fund have worked to preserve these mosaics in situ, part of a larger project to develop new conservation techniques for North Africa. They use local lime mortars, GIS mapping, and careful water drainage, preserving what Rome never meant to lift from the ground. The project has become a model across the Mediterranean. And yet, for all the clarity that conservation brings, the original purpose of Bulla Regia's underground world remains veiled. No inscriptions explain the design. No fresco tells why a city known for its forum, baths, and temples chose to hide its most delicate work beneath the dust. Was this about survival, or something more ceremonial? A separation of space between sacred above and private below? In Bulla Regia, beauty was not built to be seen. It was built to be preserved, hidden in sand, insulated by silence. From homes hidden under stone, we now step into a kingdom built from clay. A city that stood in the open yet faded just the same. It was a city made of silence and sun, not carved but pressed, shaped from dust into memory. Chan Chan was built by the Chimu around 850 CE, rising from the sands of northern Peru, a capital of clay shaped by wind, water, and time. No marble, no granite, only adobe, millions of mud bricks molded into citadels, corridors, and temples. It became the largest adobe city the world has ever seen, once home to tens of thousands. At its peak, Chan Chan sprawled across 20 square kilometers, its core fortified by 9 monumental compounds. Each was walled like a kingdom, containing burial chambers, ritual plazas, residential quarters, and reservoirs that mirrored the sky. No street signs, no inscriptions, but geometry ruled everything, with corridors cut like mazes and sightlines controlled, as if movement itself was a form of ceremony. And on the walls, still visible today, are carvings of waves, nets, fish, sea creatures, a marine language painted onto a city that stood in a desert without rain. The Chimu didn't just survive the coast, they conquered it with canals, reservoirs, and a mastery of water management still admired today. But something haunts the silence now. Many of Chan Chan's walls were scraped clean, their decorations erased, their symbols destroyed or plastered over. Was it conquest? Suppression? Or something internal, a rewriting of belief? By 1470 CE, the Inca came. They conquered the Chimu and took their artisans north to build Cusco's temples. Chan Chan was never rebuilt. No new rulers claimed it. It was abandoned, left for wind and weather. The city's skin, adobe, began to dissolve. And it still does. Every El Niño season, rains crack the walls and swell the bricks. Groundwater rises, salts bloom. Some of the huachaques, sunken gardens, now fill with water that was never meant to return. In 2025, graffiti defaced one of the remaining palace walls. Weeks earlier, construction machinery was spotted moving illegally through the protected zone. The largest adobe city on Earth remains under threat, not from time, but from neglect. And yet Chan Chan doesn't vanish quietly. A 2024 excavation near the palace district uncovered 11 elite graves, buried with shell ornaments, ear discs and beaded jewelry. They weren't kings, but they were important, entombed in silence, just steps from the wind-blown corridors the public never entered. Now, drones fly over the site. Archaeologists use 3D photogrammetry, building models to save what cannot be restored. The past is being scanned before it collapses. Every pixel, every crack, every softened carving recorded, as if the city is whispering its final version before it disappears for good. But when the story lives in mud and memory, how long can the silence hold? And now only the dust remains. This city vanished beneath wind and rain, but far east in older deserts, something else was carved, not to be seen but extracted. The desert held no city, but it remembered heat, and copper, and hands that pulled metal from stone. In the scorched Negev, where the sun paints red into sandstone and silence lasts for centuries, the earth bears wounds that never healed. Not palaces, not temples, furnaces, hollows in cliffs, slag fields the size of villages. This is Timna, a valley of copper and fire. Mines first opened here more than 6,000 years ago, but it was around 1100 BCE that the earth changed. Across a network of hidden smelting camps, nomads began pulling copper from stone with ruthless efficiency. These were not Egyptians. They were not enslaved workers chained to royal industry. They were the Edomites, desert-born, mobile, and now unmistakably powerful. Archaeologists once called it Slaves' Hill, a plateau high above the valley, circled in ash and copper slag. But the name lied. Excavations revealed not chains, but charcoal pits, woven textiles, bones from goats and fish, and even jewelry made from shell and beads. These were specialists, artisans, metalworkers, a society without cities but with hierarchy, skill and control over one of the most valuable resources of the age. Copper was currency. Copper was power. The smelting camps hummed for over 2 centuries. Thousands of furnaces, fed with desert acacia and white broom, turned ore to liquid in 40-kilogram batches. But the land had limits. Charcoal alone consumed the trees, 1 ring at a time. And by the 9th century BCE, the mines fell quiet, not from conquest but from exhaustion. The valley had nothing left to give. All of this, the rise, the organization, the collapse, left no cities. No written laws, just slag heaps, scattered tools, broken crucibles, and faint remains of tents built by those who melted kingdoms from ore. Still, the heat lingers. Geochemical studies show that metal toxins never spread far. The pollution stayed within the furnace walls. Outside, the desert kept its breath. Today, the slag mounds still gleam with black glass, untouched for 3,000 years. Camel bones, buried deep in the valley's floor, may mark the earliest trade routes, where ore moved west and influence moved silently. There is no Edomite capital, no monument to Timna's rulers. Only heat scar silence. The valley holds more than furnaces. Beneath sandstone cliffs shaped by wind and time, now called Solomon's Pillars, the Egyptians carved a shrine for Hathor, goddess of miners and desert. When they were gone, the Edomites claimed it. They removed her image, changed the offerings, lit new fires where an older goddess once watched. They didn't leave prayers, they left product. But was that enough to preserve a kingdom or erase it? Today, drones fly over Timna's camps. Slag fields are measured in laser scans. Textiles, seeds, fish bones, all still preserved in the valley's dry stillness. What remains is being documented, digitally mapped, modeled in 3D. Every layer recorded, not to glorify an empire but to remember a kingdom that left no script. Only flame. But not all vanished cities were forged from necessity. Some were born from belief. From ore and fire, we now cross into stone and myth, to a place carved for one god buried beneath another. Behind the temple of Seti I at Abydos, past columns carved with care and corridors flooded with praise, something else lies buried. Not beneath the sand, but beneath understanding. The Osireion. It doesn't rise. It descends, into water, into shadow, into silence. Massive granite blocks, some weighing more than 60 tons, form walls that trap the light. A central platform floats above a trench of still water. Pillars stand like watchers. Stone corridors vanish into darkness. No hymns, no scenes of the king, no guiding text inside the central chamber, just stone, stillness, and shadow. The Osireion shouldn't exist, not like this. It's officially dated to the reign of Seti I in the 13th century BCE, part of Egypt's powerful 19th dynasty. His mortuary temple rises just meters away, rich with inscriptions and royal legacy. But the Osireion looks older, much older. It bears no resemblance to New Kingdom architecture. Its stark, megalithic style, thick granite, raw symmetry, sunken construction, echoes temples built over 1,000 years earlier during Egypt's Old Kingdom, between 2600 and 2100 BCE. Some early Egyptologists suggested it was a structure repurposed, not built, a sacred ruin absorbed into Seti's vision. It was discovered in 1902, buried behind Seti's temple, and it has been resisting explanation ever since. Modern scholars accept it as New Kingdom, but even they admit it's an anomaly. And perhaps that was the point. Most believe the Osireion was built as a symbolic tomb for Osiris, the god of death and resurrection. Here, water was not a flaw, it was the setting. The ever-present moat may represent the primordial waters of Nun, the chaos from which creation emerged. To walk into this place was to descend into myth, to drown in rebirth. The architecture tells a story, one without words. Unlike most Egyptian temples, which open to the sky and public ritual, the Osireion withdraws. It burrows. It denies spectacle. There is no entry axis for processions, no monumentality for the living. It feels sealed, even when entered, as if it was meant only for the gods to witness. Even today, the Osireion resists. It is permanently flooded. Its floor remains underwater year-round. The groundwater has crept up its walls, leaving salt scars and dampness in the joints. Excavation is difficult, preservation uncertain. It has no facade, no visible function, and no completion date, just stone, stillness, and depth. Seti's name does not appear within it. No king speaks from these blocks, only shape, only weight. It was a temple that hid itself behind another temple, obscured, drowned, left nameless. But something about it endures. Pilgrims still come to the edge. They lean over railings. They look down into the dark water and wonder, was this where Osiris lay? Was it ever meant to be found? Or was it always meant to sink? The past reflected on still water, perfectly unreachable. We stood where bones lay without records, where a temple aligned to the sky but said nothing of its makers. We read questions etched in lead, still waiting for answers. We walked floors never meant to see sunlight, and wandered through a capital of clay, its walls whispering ocean myths into desert wind. We traced copper scars across a kingdom that left no face behind, and we looked down into water-dark stone, where even the gods refused to speak. 7 places, 7 offerings, each preserved just enough to unsettle us. They were not meant to be understood, but perhaps they were never meant to be forgotten. If one still echoes for you, let it reach further. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't. Share the mystery. Let others follow the trail. There are more ruins ahead, more riddles waiting to awaken. Until next time, only on Riddle Me This Mysteries.